So last week we met and we spoke about healing the mind through wisdom and compassion. And I don't know how it was for you, but for me this week, I thought it's really difficult for us to grasp the meaning of healing, what we talk about when we talk about healing, and where do we look for that, and how do we go about, and where. So I thought today maybe we can talk about. I'm going to try to explain it again, and I'm going to use a visual image that might be helpful. And then from there, I would like to go and talk about something that really is obstructing our healing, our inner healing, but also the practice of Buddhism, which is our aversion that can grow into anger. And I want to talk about that and explain what anger is actually doing to the mind and why it is. I mean, I always say this is the most destructive emotion that we have. And then they point out how we, with aggression, how we can destroy relationships and how we destroy merit and that kind of things. But I think the destruction is much closer to ourselves. And it doesn't have to be that big or, so visible for it to help us to disconnect, or to make that we disconnect from where we actually want to be. So I want to talk about that, and then most likely we will need the whole session for that. And so then before we begin, we know that we always set what we call a good motivation, or a motivation that is beneficial, knowing that if we don't adjust our motivation, then automatically whatever we are doing becomes a cause for samsara. And within Buddhist teaching and within the perspective that Buddhism gives us, what we actually would like to do is we want to free ourselves from that samsara. And in order to for our actions to become of a nature that is going to be helpful for that, we adjust our motivation. And then after adjusting the motivation, we can take refuge. And I'll ask Yeshe to put up the refuge prayer so that we can recite it together. So for the motivation, we just take a couple of minutes, maybe first to settle the mind and to really become present in the here and now, so that being here in this teaching is not just something that we do on the side, or we are just doing that in passing, but we actually say, no, I'm going to take my time for that, to be mindfully present in myself, in my body, with my mind, so that I can listen with mindfulness, so that I can really let penetrate whatever is said into my mind. Because what I would like to do is I would like to free myself from all my suffering. I would like to find a happiness that is not dependent upon causes and conditions. And I do not only want to do that for myself, but I realize that there are so many sentient beings, actually all sentient beings around me, who are suffering from exactly the same as I do and have the same needs as I have. And so I would like them to become free of suffering as well. And so whatever I'm going to do today is going to be for that purpose, so that I can free myself from all suffering, so that I have the capacity to also free others from their suffering. And the best way to do that, if we strive for enlightenment, which is a state in which we have developed all the positive qualities that can be developed, and in which we have eliminated all the faults or the obstructions that prevent us from seeing reality as it is. Only in that state do we have the capacity to be really of benefit to all sentient beings. And although we might not completely know what that state means, we can just, as good as we can develop that mind. And that is good enough with all the knowledge that you have, you develop that mind. And then with that in mind, we can take refuge. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. And then with that in mind, we go to back to the kind of the session. Oh, hi, Cornelius is there.
Hi, how are you?
Very good, thank you. You found us. You are here
Yes, I
today.
found it and I listened to the first class's recording, so I'm ready to go.
Wonderful, wonderful. So last week we have been talking about healing, and I'm going to talk about that again in order to really make clear, like, where is it that we need to do the work? Because that we last week we said what we want to do. The healing itself takes place naturally, but we want to provide ourselves with the conditions so that the healing can take place. But what does that mean? And we are here on samsara. What does that mean? Providing ourselves with the conditions. So if we think about our condition at the moment, and what we say in Buddhism is that we are here born on this planet in this desire realm under the influence of karma and delusions. Karma and delusions are coming from our ignorance, right? And I'm sure that you have heard these words, right? And the meaning that you have for that is maybe not fully, but ignorance means that we are blinded. We cannot see the nature of reality. It's like we are in the dark. It's like we have a veil in front of us. And because of that, we cannot see what is actually there. That veil has been there forever. They say since beginningless time, which means that we have never had the experience what it is to be without that veil. Why is that veil there? I mean, in general, I cannot say, right? Why is it that there are sentient beings who have this ignorance? I do not know. That is just the state that we find ourselves in. Then, under the influence of our actions, we can contribute to that ignorance so that the ignorance becomes thicker, or we can create actions that actually help us to lessen that ignorance so that the veil becomes a little bit thinner, so that the blindness, it's like we let a little bit of light come into that darkness. So, but because we can't see our true nature, if we don't put any effort into working with our ignorance and trying to change that ignorance, we will just continue creating more of the same. True? Can you see that? That's like a little bit, it's the bad part of the story, right? It's like we maybe don't want to know it. The good part is that we can do something about it, but the bad part is that we have to, that if we don't do anything, it will only become worse. Or we just go from high to low, and from having a lot to having nothing. We just experience all the sufferings from samsara again and again and again. So then if the condition is that we have that ignorance, that we are blinded by that ignorance, then what we all have is the wish to be happy and the wish to be free of suffering. We share that with all sentient beings. And again, if we are not educated within a religion, then the way that we find happiness is by just, I'm going to get what I want. And the way that I'm free of suffering is if I have something that I don't want, I'm trying to get rid of it. Right? So this is the happiness that we have here in this, on this planet Earth, in the desire realm. It's like if we look at animals, they do exactly the same. Right? I want more of that what I like, and I want to have less of that what I don't like. And if we don't use our intellectual mind, this is what we're automatically doing the whole day. True. We just follow, we feel I follow my nature, but what I constantly do, I want to be more comfortable and I want to have less of this discomfort. And the mind is constantly going like that. We don't have to think about that. It happens automatically. Some people say it happens on the level of the hormones. I don't know what that means, but it happens as it's like part of our nature, part of our ignorant nature that we find happiness like that or try to find happiness like that. So then what the happiness that we find in that way is the happiness of the desire, which is the short-term pleasure. We sometimes have a good experience, and then we all know that that experience changes. And then for a while, we might have not such good experiences, and we keep looking for something that is exciting us, that we really like. And then, oh, there it is again for a short while, and then it is gone again. Right? And so we keep chasing that. Then within our realm, then there are many beings that said, but there are other ways to finding happiness. For instance, the Hindus or the yogis, they look for a happiness within the desire realm, which is a happiness where they call that I'm going to achieve enlightenment, I'm going to achieve liberation, and I'm going to practice the concentrations and the absorptions. And now I have to check if you know what I'm talking about. If I develop a state of concentration, single-pointed concentration, then in my mind, there are no delusions arising, maybe very subtle, but almost nothing. And that state is extremely blissful. And I can develop such a state of single-pointed concentration on different levels of subtlety. There are like 8 levels of subtlety that I can develop. They become more and more, first more blissful, then more peaceful. And then that last state, that 8th state, is called by the yogis, that is moksha. They say, I have attained liberation. According to Buddhism, well, you have attained a state of peace, and you have a very, very subtle mind, but you're still in samsara. Which means once your karma is finished to be in that state, they normally say you fall back. You actually fall completely back to the lower realms and to the hell realm. I don't have experience with that. I cannot just repeat what I hear in Buddhist teachings, but I do know that there's going to be an end to that state, right? Because everything that we produce within samsara, there's going to be an end to that. So also these blissful, beautiful states, they might last for a long time, but eventually it's going to end because it's still within samsara. It's not a true freedom of what we are suffering from. It looks like that. They are telling us it is like that, but in actuality, it's not like that. Right? So that is the happiness that we can find within the desire realm. Then we can think about the happiness that the religions are talking about, finding God. And finding God or Allah and I'm going to put this a little bit on one heap, and I'm not sure if that is completely right, but for the ease. So what all religions are teaching is to develop a good heart, to not just think about yourself, but also to think about others. And what they also teach is they teach you certain ethical values. This is what you need to do in order to be a good human being. And when you engage in actions like that, you are a bad human being, right? You are not such a good human being. And so by becoming a good human being, by practicing the ethics, the values that make you a good human being, you kind of, it is a way to find happiness. Just living up to these values comes with the feeling of happiness. And if we look into Buddhism, then what that means is you are practicing ethics, you are practicing abstaining from the 10 non-virtues and practicing the virtuous actions. By doing so, we stop creating causes for suffering, and we are creating causes for happiness. Right? So that is a happiness that we can find, but it is a happiness still within samsara. True. So this is the possibilities that we have within our ignorant state of mind. And so if I make a picture of our ignorant state of mind, is that we are in the darkness, right? We are in the darkness. And somewhere, and I'm going to call that around that darkness, there is light. The light of the Buddhas, or let's call that the light of the Buddhas. It's just an image. It's not how things are in reality. It's not that we are all in these dark circles and then there is this light. But in order to help you get an idea where we want to go when we practice Buddhism, what we are actually trying to develop in the mind, it might be helpful, and there might be other ways that you can explain it, but this was coming to my mind this week, and I thought, let's see if that helps. So we are kind of in the darkness, and around us is all that light that is actually what we say in Buddhism, it's our true nature. We have the potential to clear all that darkness that is in our mind, all that ignorance, all that not knowing, and all that distorted knowing. We can clear that from the mind so that the mind becomes completely free of it. And when the mind is completely free of it, we are in that state, what we can call Buddhahood, or that state of complete enlightenment. And within that state, that is the state in which we can experience the most happiness that is possible. So we need to find a way to go from that dark state into how can I connect with that light, for which I have the potential. But somehow I need to connect with that. At the moment, we are not connected with that. Or most of us are not connected with it, or maybe sometimes we feel a little bit of connection and then it's gone again. And we're not sure how we can sustain that connection, right? So ultimate healing, for me, what I believe ultimate healing is once we make that connection, once we shed all that darkness that is suppressing that inner potential of Buddhahood, that inner potential of enlightenment, and we manifest that potential into all the qualities of Buddhahood, whether that is the qualities of wisdom or the qualities of compassion. We manifest all of them, and by manifesting them, all the darkness of ignorance is shattered, is gone. Right? That's ultimate healing. So when we practice Buddhism, we want to kind of on the way. We want to eventually end up there. So then how do we do that? So Buddhism comes, when I first met Buddhism, I only saw these big books, right? And I'm not a reader. And I was like, oh no, Buddhism is not for me. If I need to read all these books, it's not gonna happen for me. I feel I'm a more practical person. I want to experience, I want to connect. I do not want to sit reading books, So there are these extensive texts, and all these texts, they are talking about either about what it means to be a Buddha, or they talk about the way how to become a Buddha, or they talk about our ignorance, our darkness, and how to apply antidotes in order to kind of undo that darkness, in order not to be occupied in that darkness, right? So one of our biggest problems is that we don't know that light. We only know samsara. We only know that darkness, that ignorance. We only know that world, and we have grown up in that world, and we have learned to survive in that world, and we have learned to kind of become comfortable in that world. So every time, even if we hear about Buddhism, when we try to connect with that, we use the same tools as that we have in order to sustain the samsara that we are in. Have you ever noticed that? You're practicing Buddhism, and then at a certain point, you have the feeling that I'm just trying to fix samsara. You know, I still sometimes feel I'm just trying to fix samsara. I'm just trying to make this life better. But it's not Dharma what I'm doing. I just try to apply methods in order to make this life better. I'm fixing samsara because that is the only thing I know. Right? Even if I listen a lot to Buddhist teachings, still, this is my world that I've been living in. You're asking me to let go of this world and move into another world. What is that? How is that going to look like? How can I survive there? How do things function there? I have no idea. Right? So it is logic that we go back to the world that we know. We are how, I'm not sure how you say that in English. We are these habit people, right? We are so used to live in accordance with habits. So that's the first thing that we go back to what we already know. And this is what we have to keep in mind. So when we are in this darkness and we're trying to get out, so Buddhism presents us with all these teachings, and the way that, especially in the Gelugpa tradition, these teachings are practiced is that first we're going to get this intellectual concept of how things are when we are enlightened, how the path looks like, how our mind looks like. Intellectually, it's almost like you put it on top of you and then you want it to sink in, right? You want it to make your second nature. But in order to make it your second nature, you first need to understand it intellectually. Then you need to communicate it. You need to discuss it with other people who are interested in that. And then when you have a very clear understanding of what you are looking at, then you're going to meditate on it. And so in Buddhism, we call that the 3 higher trainings. The higher training in wisdom and concentration and in ethics. Right? No. I actually want to say we have the wisdom of listening, the wisdom of contemplation, and the wisdom of meditation. This is what I was looking for. So we have these 3 types of wisdoms that actually show us the way how to go about in order to change our mind in a way that it becomes more in accordance with reality. So reality is that Buddha nature. Reality is that sphere that is there, that is functioning in a certain way, and that is functioning in the way the universe functions, right? It is functioning based on the laws of cause and effect. And within that universe, nothing is existing in and of itself. There is nothing that exists inherently or truly. Everything is changeable. Everything depends upon the mind. So in order to understand that, we first need intellectually build up an idea about our own mind and an idea about the possibilities of the mind and how reality looks like, ultimate reality, conventional reality. So that is we do that by listening to the teachings, by reading books, and then we're going to think about it and we're going to discuss it and we're going to get a really clear picture of what we are trying to achieve, what we are trying to let go of, and then we start meditating on it. So from up here, we bring it slowly down. We first think about it, then we talk about it, and then we bring it deeper into our system. And we need to go that way in order to change our mind on all levels. right? When we think about the mind, often we think my mind is here, right? We kind of equate it with the brain or with our function of thinking. But the mind is actually present in the whole body and even outside of that. It is connected to this body. It is together with this body. But I can also think about my sister in Canada, and my sister might pick up that I'm thinking of her and she might call me. And I think, oh, isn't that a coincidence? I was just thinking of you, right? So that mind is not completely limited to my body, but it is attached. It is like there is a connection with the body that cannot be severed until the moment that we die. And the mind is living inside the body, everywhere inside the body. I can feel in my foot, that feeling in my foot is my mind. The mind is that which experiences. So I can feel my whole body. My gut is part of my mind, right? What is happening in my gut and the way it functions is very strongly related to my mind. And we know that if I'm upset or if I'm stressed, I can feel it in my gut, right? My digestion is not so good anymore. Maybe some people get diarrhea, other people get constipation. There is a connection there. We react with our gut. We also know that we react with the solar plexus, right? If there is a lot of aggression around us, we can feel it. Oh my God, this energy here, I don't like it. I don't want to be here, right? We also feel it in our heart. We feel it in our throat. We feel it in our I was going to say brain, but maybe there's more here than just brain. Maybe we have a wisdom consciousness here as well. We have all these layers inside us. And if we want to bring the knowledge of Buddhism inside our mind, if we want to merge that knowledge with our mind, we have to bring it to all the levels of the mind. True? So we first start intellectually, and then we start thinking about it, and then we try to connect with it on a deeper level so that it becomes our second nature, so that it becomes, and I think when we start meditating on it, what we want is that knowledge, which is in accordance with reality. But as long as it is in our brain, it's not the reality itself, right? Our mind is still disconnected from that reality. But then if we can bring that knowledge to the experience and we can start resonating, how to say? We speak about loving kindness, we speak about compassion, but we're not always feeling it. But the moment we feel it, we resonate with that. Something in us becomes that. And so when we can do the same with Buddha's teachings, we start to resonate like that. We actually start to connect with reality as it is. It is like that reality is there, but we cannot perceive it because of our ignorance. And then due to the study, due to the understanding, due to the meditation, we can connect more and more and more with that reality. And the more we connect with that reality, it is like that reality is going to help us, that reality is going to support us. So when we start acting in accordance with reality, reality is going to support us in our way of being, in the things that we are trying to achieve. I don't know if you ever have experienced that when you I don't know, I've noticed that sometimes working in relation to the gurus, you have to organize a long life puja. And so many things need to happen in order for that long life puja to be successful. I don't know, one time I was at Buddha House in Australia and we were doing it and there was so much to do. And so there were all these cutters, and I felt they need to be ironed, I don't know. It was all a bit messy. And I thought, I don't know how to do everything, right? And then this girl comes and she says, "Oh, I was just passing by, and I heard something is happening here. You need any help?" And so I said, "Yeah, actually, yes. I I need to iron all these cutters. Could you help me?" She did the whole day ironing. She left. I've never seen her back. Right. And I feel, oh, this is the universe somehow helping, It's like I do my very best to do everything in accordance with what I've learned. And then something happens that is going to support me. Have you ever had these experiences? I see some people nodding, This is like, it's like, I always feel like, oh, I'm on a good track. Just keep going, even if you don't know how you're going to finish everything, even if you don't know how it's all going to fit together, come together. I just keep going, and I don't know, it always comes together somehow. And so I can call that the blessings of the Buddhas, or the blessings of the lineage lamas, but I also feel like they are connected to that field, right? That reality. They are connected to that ultimate reality. They're connected to conventional reality as it is. And so when I start to work in accordance with that, there is a connection that can happen. There is a receptivity so that their influence can happen, or that kind of influence can happen. That's how I feel it. I don't know how you feel it. Does that resonate a little bit? I see Yesha saying yes. Yes, a few people say yes. So then so ultimate healing is that we connect with ultimate reality and conventional reality as it is, within ourselves and therefore outside of ourselves. And due to that, all that ignorance will disappear. It will just dissolve. It's like you turn on the light in the room. It's not that you have destroyed the darkness. It's not that the darkness has left the room. But the moment the light is on, there is no more darkness. And you think, where was the darkness? What is actually darkness? What is it? You can't grasp it, can you? But it is there. But the moment there's light, it's gone. Same with how we realize the mind. The moment we connect, the darkness is gone. The moment we connect with how things are in reality, darkness is gone. Ignorance is gone. That little bit of ignorance, right? Not the whole thing in one, but that little bit. So if we then think, how does reality look like? We can look at the wisdom side. We can look at the compassion side, right? So if we would fully develop our capacity that we have, what we are left with is, it's not that we have to create something within us. We have the potential already. But what we need to do is we need to identify where we are connecting with darkness, or where we are doing something that reinforces the darkness. And we need to understand what we can do in order to kind of reinforce that potential of light that we have within ourselves. There is a big difference that we need to understand, right? Oh, if my anger is coming up in my mind and then I'm going to start shouting, I'm actually reinforcing the darkness in my mind. If I'm serious about developing all my good qualities, this is the place where I should say, stop, this is not beneficial for you. So what can I do? I can do something else. I can, for instance, reflect on loving kindness. Loving kindness is a quality that is in resonance with reality. When all the darkness is gone, what we are left with is loving kindness and compassion. It's naturally there. It's our nature. It's not different from our nature. As long as we are disconnected with that nature, we practice loving kindness, and it might feel like it's not completely what I am, and maybe I feel like, actually I'm really angry, or maybe we are afraid that although I practice it, it's like it's a bit fake, because deep inside I feel that actually I'm a bad person, and so loving kindness is not really who I am, but I just practice it because somehow it gives me a good feeling, and this is what we do in Buddhism. So these are all layers of disconnect that if we remove them, I can 100% guarantee you what is left is only loving kindness and compassion. All that darkness, all that badness that you see in yourself, all these layers where you think I'm wrong or I'm not good enough, or I'm not, they're all gone. They're not part of our nature, of no one. Not one sentient being has a nature like that. Thinking I'm wrong, thinking I'm not good enough, all these, they're all part of our ignorance. These are thoughts not in accordance with reality. Right. So that is what happens if we would realize our true nature. Inside is only love and compassion. And then on the level of the wisdom mind, we can see reality as it is. We understand reality as it is, which means I can see that reality is in the nature of impermanence. Right? It's not a shock for me that things are impermanent by nature. And what I can see directly, once I have that level of realizations, I can see that things do not exist in and of themselves, that things come about in dependence upon causes and conditions, the mind. Nothing has its own entity. Knowing that gives me huge freedom, because when I know all that, I understand karma, which means there is no reason to be angry. There's no reason to be attached. There is no reason for any of the disturbing emotions to arise. I'm totally free of all of that. Right? So we are trying to connect. So when we practice Buddhism, we're trying to bring the mind in line with how things are in actuality. And in the beginning, when we are on our journey, we think, I don't really feel it. I don't really experience it, but they say it is like that, so I'll accept it, But then when we keep going in accordance with that, at a certain point, something might just start dawning in the mind, and we say, "Oh, I felt something. I felt it," And then a change happens, and some confidence happens, like, wow, this is really true. This really affects my mind, and it affects my mind in a positive way. And these are very good moments in order to nourish your practice and get some encouragement to keep going, because practicing Dharma is not easy, right? Practicing Dharma means that you're going to change your whole way of being. And we have been like this forever. I'm going to change it into something else. I'm going to bring myself more in line with what is true. And so in order to discover what is true, we listen to the teachings. Right? I'm going to stop here for a minute and see if you have any questions. Sheila.
So, thank you, Venerable. My question is, I've been studying for a while now, and I've tried to be a kind person and be generous. But I also notice, particularly with my good friends who I love dearly, there's another voice in my head that may be saying, like, you're really a jerk, or that's, and I don't express it, but I've noticed that this voice comes up. And
Is that about yourself or about your friend?
I'm about my friends. I mean, about myself
too. You think that they're jerks?
Sometimes. I mean, I think, oh, that's like a really stupid thing that person said, or she's so delusional, or what a pain in the ass, and
sometimes friends are like that, no?
Yeah.
And
But
so then even if they are like that, we still try to be kind. And I think sometimes it's good to acknowledge, that I think you're just a pain in the ass, and I think you're just in your delusions, but it doesn't mean that I should become angry with you, or it shouldn't mean that I should judge you on that. You're just as deluded as anybody else. And so you have your right to be delusional, right? It's like, it's part of who we are. It's part of what we identify with. But it doesn't mean I have to support you in being that. Also, right? So if I see somebody being delusional, I become quiet and I withdraw a little bit to, because that's the only thing that I can do. I'm not going to tell them how wonderful they are. I'm not going to say that I think they're right. But sometimes it's also not the right time to say, I don't think that what you're doing is correct. So I become quiet, but I stick with what I observe, right? Without a judgment, without becoming agitated. I just think this is not the right time to, because I can see there are too many delusions.
usually makes me angry internally. I mean, I don't say anything to them, but I realize that, I'm pissed off.
Yes. And so then you can think, okay, we're going to talk about being pissed off very soon. Maybe you want to hold that a little bit, but it is always interesting to think like, what is it that makes me pissed off? You want to maybe move something while they make that you cannot move it. So then you have to wait. Or what is it that makes you pissed off? You know that?
Well, it varies. I mean, depends on something that they're doing or saying, something that I don't agree with, which like, I don't feel it's time to say, oh, you're so delusional. That's like not true. But inside I'm thinking like, oh, that's so not true. And, why are you perceiving that or saying that? Or, it's
And what holds you back from saying that is so not true?
well, I don't want to hurt their feelings, or I think they won't understand, or it'll just lead to an argument with them.
Uh-huh.
So I just, you know,
And
but
so, but then you hold on to the fact that you know that that is not true.
that
In
that
yourself, you validate yourself. You say that what I observe is,
yeah,
or
I
you
guess
could,
I think I'm right, they're wrong.
yes, I'm right, they're wrong. So when we are right, or when we think that we are right, then often we want to have our right. And if I want to have my right and I don't get it, I get angry.
Right.
But you can also be right and have enough on you for how you say. I think often we want to have this validation, right? I want to be right. You have to give me my right. This validation, if you give that to yourself, so you can say, I am right. I know that I'm right, but that person is not he cannot see that at this moment. So I can't push it, but I'm not going to change me being right. And I'm going to wait for a later moment in order to see if, maybe at a later moment I can show him, or I can, yeah. Sometimes things do not get resolved in the moment that we want it. Sometimes things need more time. But if you have an issue with you want to be right, then I think there is a lack of validation. You need their validation to be right. And so if that is the case, then a solution for that could be that you're going to validate yourself and say, I don't need him to give me right. I know I'm right. Right? Because if you 100% know it, your mind does not get disturbed when you don't get it. But when you depend upon others for validation for being right, and they don't give you that, you get disturbed.
Interesting. Yeah.
You see that? And so then if then you have to check which part of me needs validation. Sometimes, and I go often back to that, sometimes these are little inner children, a little girl that at a certain point in her life, she was so right, but nobody could see it. And she was so frustrated and she didn't know how to say it. And nobody was listening to her. And everybody thought she was talking nonsense. That girl, maybe she is there and she's like, but I'm right. I know I'm right. So then we have to connect with that inner girl and say, you were right. You were right. I know you were right. And now you're big enough in order to be able to express it in a way that people can hear it. When it's the right time, that they can hear it. And so I think the healing process happens there. Connecting with that part in you that needs validation. And when you really find that part and you can give that validation in all aspects, then that part becomes quiet. It is not needy anymore. Then you become independent. You don't need that other person to feel good. You feel good within yourself. You know it. You know it. You don't need anybody to tell you whether it's right or wrong.
So is that pride?
That you know it?
Yeah, that you're thinking that, you're
No,
right.
I think that can be discernment. That can be your wisdom mind. That doesn't have to be pride. It's not, it becomes pride when I say, and I know better.
Mm-hmm.
That's pride. But I can know reality, and I can see that person knows reality to the best of their capacity, but they cannot see what I can see. Right? That's not pride. That's just understanding. I mean, we have people who understand impermanence, and then there are people who do not understand impermanence, right? And so the people who do not understand impermanence, somebody dies and they say, how is that possible? How is that possible? And we know, well, of course it's possible, right? So I know that that person doesn't understand impermanence. I understand impermanence a little bit. So that's my discernment. It's not that it makes me a better person. It doesn't mean that I'm more important. It doesn't mean that I need to tell that other person that, oh, you don't know about impermanence. Nothing like that, right? I just put things in. When I know what I know, then, and it's in accordance with reality, and I can see other people don't know that. That's just my discernment, right? It doesn't have to be any disturbing emotion involved in that. True?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so challenging. But yes, thank you.
You're welcome. Yes.
Thank you. Just hearing that, Sheila, I mean, you had a very long dialogue there, so there was many parts to it. But the first thought that I had was that the 8 verses of training the mind actually offers kind of a suggestion of how to think about that, and that. So one, I mean, I think that you should. I would personally see it as a positive sign if I'm conscious of the fact that, yeah, I'm thinking that other person is a jerk. So it's a good thing that you like recognize it. But then the 8 verses of training the mind says like, this is giving you seeing that unskillful action of the other person is giving you insight and helping you. And so it tells you to cherish them as something rare there because you're.
That's very difficult for Sheila at the moment.
Yes.
She needs to first learn something else,
Okay, please.
True? You first need to learn something else because I've heard a similar question from you before. There is something inside you that you need to resolve before you can practice Mahayana Buddhism. Sometimes I feel in Buddhism, we don't have all the requisites in our own mind in order to do all these practices because we are suffering from traumas in a way that I feel it's very hard to find within Buddhism a solution for that. Sometimes we need to do a little bit of pre-work to make the mind ready to hear the things that Buddhism has to say. So if you feel Because Sheila is trying to practice, that they are not jerks and I should be kind and I want to be kind and all that. But she has that feeling inside. And so she first needs to connect with that and understand that and reconcile that. And once that is done, then she can practice that Buddhism. Right? I think. Sorry. Does that resonate with you?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
also what Yeshe says too. I mean, that side of things also,
you do that.
I'm more aware of, yeah.
Yeah, you do that. And you see that my practice is not, but it's like, I don't get it because my mind keeps telling me something else. And sometimes when the mind keeps telling you something else, you first need to do something else. You need to do another kind of healing before you can actually really apply Buddhism. Because otherwise Buddhism is on the surface, you have all these great Mahayana practices and underneath there is this anger constantly. So I would say go first there, dig it out, pacify it, and then you apply that Buddhism. So if it works for initially, immediately for you, fantastic. But I know that it's not for everyone.
Yeah. No, but sometimes I do notice like what's going on inside my mind. I mean, I do notice, oh, you're thinking, I am noticing that too.
Yes, but then what to do with that, right? Because sometimes I think our mind is like this ball of wool that is completely entangled. And then what we're trying to do is to untangle that. And sometimes when we try to untangle it, we actually make the knots bigger or tighter, and we have learned, this is what you need to do to untangle. But I end up every time with that anger that keeps coming up when I try to practice this Buddhism. Then I have to find another way to untangle. Right? There's nothing wrong with, but the way the mind works, there are so many layers of reactions that we have, and they are not always straight. They go really weird. And in order to undo that, we are actually undoing samsara, right? Samsara, sometimes I feel like sometimes it's compared to a little rat in the wheel, right? We keep running. But sometimes I feel like it's a spiral that makes us more tight. And we need to undo that spiral. A Buddha is the most relaxed person in the world. Samsara is tight. It's like covering up that nature that we have. And then when there is stress in the mind or when there are afflictions in the mind, we are tightening up that mind. And so in order to undo it, we have to follow the lead. And so we have to follow what the mind is telling us. We have to take that seriously. We should not say to any part of us like, oh, I'm not going to listen to that, or, oh, that's rubbish, or no, unpack it. What is there? Because when you unpack it and you see it, when you see it, you bring the light. And when you bring the light, the darkness is gone, right? We have many places in ourselves that we maybe don't like, and we're not going to go there. And I think, you know what, I'm just going to try to become a really good person, and then that part will naturally disappear, or that part, nobody will see that, but when we try to become a good person without going to that part that we don't like so much about ourselves, we're just covering up, and we're not transforming that part. To really transform, we have to connect. And we have to see that what looks so horrible is actually part of us that is suffering terribly, and that needs love, and that needs compassion. And when we can give that to that horrible part inside ourselves, you know what, then it starts to open up. And the horrible part just disappears. And all that anger and resentment and all that was sitting there all dissolves, because it's not part of our nature. So when we shine our light there with our wisdom mind, with our compassion mind, it just dissolves. It cannot stay, because there is nothing in our mind that is naturally like that. All right, Sarah.
Sarah has a question.
Thank you. Yeah, this all resonates a lot for me. I definitely identify with what Sheila expressed. And I'll just say that for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Venerable, because I've been doing all kinds of healing and going back and forth between different modalities and then Buddhism. And what I have found, especially the things I struggle with the most, are the people I have the longest relationships with, right? Family.
Yeah,
so it's interesting to see, like, I'm spending a lot of time with my family right now. And I'm like, oh man, I get so triggered. And it's like, I think I've really, like, oh, this is super deep stuff. So, it's actually one of the things I've realized is I just, I'll spend a little bit of time on it, but I've realized I need to spend a lot more time on it, because I kind of spend a little bit of time and then I kind of reach my capacity, or, I have to go do things. And then it's like, I run away and go get coffee and chocolate and the other things that I use to soothe myself. So that's one thing I'd love to hear your thoughts on, because that's one thing I'm just realizing, like, oh, these deep things that keep coming up again and again and again, I think I'm tending to them. And of course I am tending them, but I'm just realizing I need a lot more time with them. And, maybe, what you're talking about, like, just, they start to disappear, like, and I know I've been through several rounds of challenges with family. So it's like, things are definitely not at the worst right now, but yeah, I would just love to hear your thoughts on that. Thank you.
So that family that we meet is often, and especially with partners, you fall in love and you think it's the most wonderful person in the world. And then you come closer, and then after 6 months, 8 months, you start to see other things. And then maybe after 2 years, you think, oh my God, it's the same that I had last time. Or it's similar to my dad or my mom, or, there is a karmic pattern that is present in that other person that matches yours. And being together, I mean, you cannot avoid that happening. Everybody has that in their personal relationships, that the moment that you become closer and you stay longer with each other, you see the issues that you had with your parents, you see they all, they start to appear. So these issues is related to the karma that took us to this life. So there was something to work out. Some karma is something that, sometimes karma is a suffering. No, I don't want to talk like that. So what do you do? So I think one thing that can help is if we know how to be compassionate with ourselves within that. Because when we are in the family and we get triggered, and we get easily triggered, or when we are with friends who are jerks and we get triggered, and anger arises in the mind, then often there is also a judgment to ourselves that we should not be angry and we should be more kind, or whatever. And so if we know how to be with the suffering that gets triggered inside us, or that we experience in these relationships, and we can be with that in a wholesome way, I think we already have done half of the work. I think the moment we can be with ourselves, with the suffering in a healthy way, that place in ourselves from where the anger comes, we heal that, and so then we become much less reactive. Right. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that today, if there are no other questions. And I want to go there, if that's okay with you. Because I think that is we hear in Buddhism, oh, anger is so negative and it's so destructive and it's the worst and you should never go there. And then it arises in the mind and we feel bad about ourselves and we try to knock it on the head and we try to avoid it and deny it and just, leave it as it is. And I think there is something that we can do, I think, which is more effective or which is more healing and nourishing and wholesome for the mind than just straight knocking it on the head, you know. And I think eventually you will be able to do that if you know how to be with yourself when that anger arises. So anger is, we have all this ignorance, right? We are in this black darkness of ignorance, and that ignorance cannot see reality as it is. It actually sees reality opposite to what it is. And then in dependence on that ignorance, the delusions arise in the mind. So anger is a delusion that says, I don't like this. And it arises when we receive something or when we experience an unpleasant feeling. Or if I say that differently, if we experience suffering. So when I experience suffering, immediately there is a version that says, I don't like this. I want to separate from this. Right? I want to get away from that. So when is that? That is when I want something that I cannot get, or when I get something that I don't want. Both are things that we don't like, and we react with aversion. True? So if there is something that we get that we don't want, it is kind of visible, right? You give me something that I don't want. You're saying this to me. I don't like it. I can give that back to you. Hey, when you say that, that's really hurtful. I don't like it. I give it back to you. But if there is something that I want and I can't get it, especially when we are very little children, I think there is a lot of trauma that happens with us, or wounds that happen with us when we are very little. We want something and we don't get it. You know, that can make you very desperate. And there is a lot of aversion that arises in dependence on that. And then anger. And then if you can't express that anger to that other person, you might internalize that anger and you direct it to yourself. And then, you know, the whole entanglement in relation to ourselves starts. For instance, and this is something that I saw a lot with the children that I was working with. You have, because I think, you know, generations are different, right? Children of different generations are different beings. So, and at the moment, I have the feeling that the children that are born, they have more loving kindness and more wisdom than we have. I don't know if you see that too. Not all of them. But there is a tendency that there is a raising of the vibration of these minds. You know, they're on a different level. So if these children are born with their parents, and the parents have a more coarse vibration, these parents cannot observe that subtle vibration of the child. Right? So they're looking at a child and they connect with the lower vibrations of the child, but not with that what the child feels is their essence. So the child is there and saying, hello, please see me, please see me. But the parents cannot see that part of the child, you know, so they keep talking to something else in the child, and the child feels like they don't see me, you know. So then the child tries to express themselves in other ways, try to connect in other ways, and it doesn't happen. Then there is frustration. Then there is, at a certain point, you know, there can be anger. There can be the feeling of, I'm not capable of connecting. There might be the feeling of, oh, I'm not good enough. There might be the feeling of neglect. Oh, they don't see me. They don't give me attention. Well, from the mother's side, the mother might have the feeling, I give this child all the attention at once. Right? And so then that lack of attention might do something with the reaction of aversion and then anger in the mind that really is not such a nice beginning of life, you know, how you start to relate, especially to yourself. If you feel like I'm not capable of connecting, if that is your conclusion, you're going to carry that with you the rest of your life. You recognize that? Or if you feel like I must be doing something wrong, that my mom is not seeing me. But like the child doesn't think intellectually like that, but it's a feeling that I express with words. I must be doing something wrong, that my mom is not seeing me, or that my mom is not giving me attention. You might have the feeling I'm doing something wrong. It must be me. I'm doing something wrong. While in actuality, there is just a different level of connection. There is not the meeting of the connection in the way that you need it. Right? Can you kind of tune into that this can be possibilities? So then we have that aversion reaction arising in I need something and it is not there, right? So then what is aversion doing? I have a need and it is not met, and I suffer from that because the need is so big and I'm craving for it and it's not coming, right? There's a lot of suffering that we experience and dependence upon that. And then because we suffer, what the mind does when we suffer, aversion arises, and aversion appears as a protection to the suffering. I suffer, and then the mind says, I don't like this, I want to be separated from this, which means I'm going to protect you from your suffering. And I'm going to protect you by separating from your suffering. And so then how does the aversion separate us from suffering? It is kind of suppressing the feeling of suffering that we have. And that suppression can be the suppression, it can be a denial, it can be that you dissociate from that part in you, it can be that I just don't want to feel it. It's like it doesn't exist even. We can dissociate that much, right? That we are not even aware that it is in our mind. We disconnect from it in order to protect ourselves. Can you see that? So part of us is suffering, and then we want to disconnect from that. And so what then happens is we disconnect from part of us. And disconnection comes with the message, I don't like this. And so we start not liking part of us. So we don't like parts of us because these are suffering parts that we do not want to feel. Then we suffer from the disconnection because disconnection feels like a pain. Disconnection feels like something that is not natural. You know, we feel like I cannot really be myself. I don't know why, but I feel like disconnected. If we disconnect from many parts of ourselves, these parts, they're all going to feel lonely. They feel disconnected. So we suffer from loneliness because we have disconnected from parts that we're suffering. And then we say, I don't like you. I'm just going to kind of get rid of you. That's what we do internally. I want to see if you can relate to that or not. Can you? So the reaction that is there to protect us actually is the reaction that creates these inner wounds where we separate from parts of us and start disliking parts of us and start rejecting parts of us. And in dependence on that, we feel the rejection, we feel the loneliness that comes with being separated, the loneliness that comes with feeling not connected. We're going to feel all that internally, in dependence on our own reaction of aversion, which can also be anger. Then, yes, this is what we do. Then every time when somebody rejects me, or when somebody, for instance, doesn't give me the attention that I want, right, I might feel that rejection. And then I might think, oh, what did you do wrong? That person didn't give you attention. Or there you see, you can't even connect with that person. Or whatever. I reinforce what I already had been doing with myself internally. So after the rejection of that other person, I'm going to reject myself. And I think the most painful thing is that, if we can stop doing that. Yes, other people can reject us. Yes, other people might not understand us. Yes, other people might not connect with us in the way that we like to. But if I stay connected with me, if I know all the parts in me and I can connect with them, I don't suffer from that rejection from others. I don't suffer from not being right or not getting my right. I don't suffer from being left alone. I don't suffer from not being part of the group. I don't suffer from having the feeling that something is wrong with me. It's like all that disappears when I connect with all these parts in myself that at the moment I don't like, but if I start seeing them, these are actually just parts that were suffering. And maybe there was a time in your life that you could not cope with that suffering. Maybe there was a part in your life that you felt so overwhelmed with the suffering that you had to disconnect. But now, as an adult, we can go back to these parts and we can reconnect with these parts. We can re-experience, or maybe for the first time experience, that pain or that suffering that actually was there, and that at a certain point in time when we were too little or the situation was too difficult or too overwhelming, we could not fully experience that. And so that feeling is still somewhere inside us. That hurt is still somewhere inside us. So if we can connect with that and allow it to arise and we feel it, then that basis, independence of which agitation comes and anger comes, we remove that. It's gone. True. Can you see that? This is how it intellectually looks like. And so then how do we practice that? Right? So if we would give that a name, then I would give that the name of self-compassion. We have suffering inside us and we want to be free of that suffering. And so how do we free these experiences that we have not yet fully experienced? Do you agree with that there is something inside us that is hurting and we have trouble feeling the hurt because it might be too overwhelming, or it might be something that we're scared of, or it might be something that we have forgotten. We don't even know where it is sitting, but we know it is somewhere there. If we have the courage to feel that, fully feel that, and we can do that in a sphere of loving kindness and compassion, that will naturally heal. That is the quality of healing. And so if we think about what do I need in order to practice that, we need to be mindful of the feeling. We need to, when there is something hurting, we have to go with our awareness to that place and say, what is that I'm feeling? I'm going to feel it. You know what? I'm going to feel it. And then the environment that we create around that feeling is an environment of loving kindness and compassion, in which we say to ourselves, it's okay to feel that. We're going to talk to ourselves in the way that we talk to our best friend who is suffering and who's coming to you and says, oh, I have this naggy feeling here. I don't know what it is. And then you listen. Oh, yeah. How does it feel like? What does it remind you of? What do you need to fully feel that? What is it that you need? What can I say to you so that you have the courage to feel it? And so we speak really nicely and kindly to ourselves, and we allow that feeling to arise. The feeling of suffering, within that feeling of suffering is the feeling of separation, because that's the function of aversion. I'm going to separate you from the suffering. So now by experiencing that, we want to create the experience of connection. So I can say, I understand what you are feeling. You know, I have experienced this before, or other human beings experience something similar. Or I am here with you. I can say to myself, I am with you, experiencing what you are experiencing. You are not alone. Right? Even if you're only one person, I can talk to my parts, right? We don't become schizophrenic when we do that. We can just talk to parts of ourselves and say, I'm here. I'm here for you. My self of today is here for all these parts in me that at a certain point in time could not bear the suffering that they were experiencing. And so that self of me that I am today is going to be present with these parts and is going to say, I am here and I can handle this. And I know how to be with this without being afraid. Right? Normally, when we experience suffering, what do we say to ourselves? What do we say to ourselves when we suffer?
You shouldn't feel like that.
You shouldn't feel like that. Yes. And what else? So you already deny the feeling, right? You already suppress it. You shouldn't feel like that. Because when you feel like that, then what is the next thing that comes, Cornelius?
So when you say you shouldn't feel like that, you start to become a little more self-critical.
You become self-critical. But what if you would say, because when you feel like that, then
There's something wrong with you.
Then there's something wrong with you. And when there's something wrong with you, then
you feel disconnected from yourself and others.
You feel disconnected, and others might think you're disconnected, and maybe other people won't like you, and maybe other people, there's a whole voice that starts coming with negative feelings that we experience. And that voice is an attempt not to feel the feeling. But what we are doing is we beat ourselves up, no? Sometimes we say, you're such a loser. You don't even, that you feel like that, you're such a loser. You're worth nothing, that you feel like that. True? Or is that just me beating myself up when I experience suffering?
No, I think that's universal.
That's universal. So that is weird, no? We beat ourselves up because we are suffering, and we somehow feel that it shouldn't be like that, and we shouldn't feel like that. And so then we disconnect from the feeling. In an attempt not to feel it, we beat ourselves up in an attempt not to feel the suffering. I mean, it's really weird. If you think about it, it's so weird. It's so counterproductive. If we would say, I'm suffering. Oh, I'm suffering, I mean, we are in samsara. We are living in the human realm. We are the experiences that we have is partly suffering and partly happiness. And that's the right balance in order to have enough inspiration to practice and enough suffering so that we can use the suffering to practice, but also enough happiness to sustain that, right? So experiencing suffering is part of being a human being. We cannot be human beings with no suffering. It's impossible. It is impossible. So when suffering comes, we could say, well, this is my portion, right? This is me learning to be a human being. This is what is coming my way. So how, and it's not, you're not the only human being who is experiencing this type of suffering. You know, there are many, many, many around you. So how can you become an example for all these human beings? How can you take the suffering? You say, you know what, it came to on my plate. I'll take it. It's mine. I'll take it. And I'm going to digest it and I'm going to feel it. And then we can think, I'll feel it on behalf of others, or I feel it so that when somebody else comes with something similar, I can share my experience, or I feel it because I can see when I feel it, I'm actually, after that, I'm totally released. I know that it is gone, you know, so it's the best way to get rid of suffering, to move through it, to experience it. So what do I need to say to myself so that I can move through it? So we need a lot of encouragement. We need a lot of loving kindness. We need to, you know, let ourselves know that we are good enough even when we feel suffering. It is not a sign of us being weak. It is not a sign of us being stupid. It's none of that. It's just a sign of being human and experiencing some karma that we have created in the past. And the best way to move through that is that we fully experience that. And then feelings, they come and they go, right? So the moment the feeling completely has arisen in the mind, there is only one way, which means it's going to dissolve. That feeling is not going to stay in the mind. It's impossible. Feelings have no quality that when they come up, you know what, they're going to stay forever. Feelings don't have that quality. Good feelings don't have that quality. Negative feelings don't have that quality. Right? We know that when good feelings come, they're gone before we know it. Well, guess what? Same for negative feelings. Same for suffering feelings. They come, and as soon as they are at their height, they naturally go. They cannot stay in the mind. Impossible. The only reason why suffering stays in the mind is because we don't want to feel it. We suppress it. We have our aversion, which looks like a protection from suffering, you know, but because of that, it stays in the mind. So that protection that we are offered is deluded, right? It is not in accordance with reality. And then we can see that our delusions, our aversion, and next week we also will talk about attachment. They are not in accordance with reality. So they give us the opposite message of how things actually are. They say, I'm here to protect you. Oh, but actually you caused me so much suffering. And nobody tells us that. Right? We are not taught as children how to be with unpleasant feelings. Right? We're not taught how to soothe ourselves when we are in pain, or when we are grieving, or when we are not told how to do that. And our parents, I don't know about yours, but my parents were not a good example for that either. You know, they had so many traumas in their own life. They had to deny, they had to pretend nothing had happened. They had to suppress it. They had no tools of how to be with that. You know, having lived through the Second World War. But I think this is, for me, this is the most valuable lesson that I have learned in life, which gives me most tools to deal with the suffering that is in this life. And once you find that attitude to know how to let it quickly resolve, or as quickly as possible. Sometimes karma is tough, you know, and there might be feelings in the mind that take quite a long time before they totally dissolve. But all of them can dissolve because none of them are in the nature of your mind. And once they are resolved, you become so much easier on yourself. You become so much easier with others. You become such better vessel to practice the teachings as they were intended. All right, I can see that Sarah needs to go. And we have another 5 minutes. And I don't know if people have questions about this.
I have a question. What do you think has been most effective in your practice to cultivate that attitude of sort of dealing with the suffering head on? I mean, is it through meditation? Is it through service? Is it through a combination of things? Is there one thing that sort of stands out that has been particularly helpful in your practice?
I mean, for me, it has been a struggle to really embrace suffering. You know, it's like everything in me is like, I don't want to go there. And I guess I share that with everyone, right? This is what we naturally have, that attitude. That is the nature of suffering. I don't want to go there. I don't want to feel it. But I think life kind of forced me in that direction. It's like when you get so much at a certain point, you cannot keep resisting. You need to find another way of doing that. And so one time I spoke with Lama Zopa about healing and about how healing works, because I was working with the monk, and Lama Zopa said, "What do you think is wrong with this monk?" You know, and I said, "I think he has a lot of suppressed anger." Right? And then Lama Zopa said, "Oh, totally wrong psychology. Totally wrong psychology." He says, this monk has created so much merit by working for the guru, you know, so he had been working for Lama Zopa for many, many, many years. He created so much merit. Now he can purify all his hell karma, so that after this life, he will not be reborn there. So then for me, it was like, that is, I still think about that, like, because we have I think I have a much very short-term vision on healing. Lama Zopa has a very big one. You know, it's not that we're just healing anger, we are healing rebirth in the hell realms. And so how do we do that? We need a lot of merit in order to purify karma, in order to purify the karma of being born in the lower realms. We need merit, right? And so that merit we generate independence upon, you know, either you do it with study, or you do it with service, or you do it with teaching, or you do it with purification practices, and any practice that you feel is helpful for you. You use that to create merit. If you're living, you know, if you're working in normal life, you can dedicate all that work to all sentient beings and create your merit in that way, you know. And so then when the merit is there, that you can purify something, I don't know if then that pain surfaces, or then you feel like, and now is the time that I want to do something, or maybe then you find a therapist who can help you, or maybe I don't know exactly how that works, but I have the feeling myself that, you know, sometimes I know that there was something in my mind that needs attention, and I'm just not ready. I'm just not ready. And even if I try, it's not working. It's not working. I can't get there. And then, you know, you create your merit. And at a certain point, you feel like now's the time. And now I have to do it. And then it happens, and you meet the right people. Yeah, I don't know if that helps.
No, that's helpful. I remember seeing a documentary on Lama Zopa Rinpoche. It's on YouTube, and he's leading a pilgrimage, I think, to Tibet, and he is just running around everywhere creating merit. He's praying. He's like, "Oh, we can pray here on the side of the highway. We can actually go around in circles around this temple." And so there's this real joyful practice that he cultivates that you can see is just sort of permeating his whole life. And so from there, I took what, you know, you said, in terms of, there's so many opportunities to create merit if you sort of look around and you think of it in that sense. A lot of joyful opportunities for practice, joyful practice.
Yes. And I think the more merit we have, the more we can dissolve these negative feelings that we have not yet processed. And I sometimes feel they're a little bit obstacles for the practice. It's like when they're still there, we're not completely free. We are still occupied, or we're still tied to something in our past. And so the more we clear that, the more we can move forward with practice.
Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. Anybody else? Is that clear about anger and what anger does, or what aversion does, and how it is counterproductive? And that if we can change that attitude, and I know it is very, very difficult in the beginning because nothing in you wants that. But if you somehow intellectually understand, oh, it looks like I'm helping myself, but I'm actually digging my own grave if I do it like that, then maybe that gives you the courage to start working on it. And I think just being mindful of the feeling, is really helpful, and being kind to yourself. Being kind to yourself when you go through suffering. We are the most harsh to ourselves. We are not harsh to any other sentient being the way we are harsh to ourselves when we experience suffering. We would never do that to anyone, but we do it to ourselves, So if we could change that we treat ourselves like we treat our best friend, and then we're mindful of the suffering, I think you can already shift a lot with that. So I don't know, you can try this week. And so next week when we meet, I want to talk about attachment and our need for connection, and but also our need for authenticity, and often they are contradictory to each other, or they are in conflict with each other, and how we can, what that has done to us, and how we can do things differently, so that also with attachment we become more at peace with ourselves. All right. And then whatever else we can talk about, we'll talk about.
Thank you, Venerable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So we can do a quick dedication, maybe, Yeshe? Thinking that all the merits that we have created by listening and by contemplating and by letting it sink into the mind, we dedicate all that merit to the benefit of all sentient beings. Due to the merits of these virtuous actions, may I quickly attain the state of a Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish but increase more and more. And while we are going to this journey, we wish that we have company of all these amazing realized beings like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and that they will always have very good health and long life, and that they have clear minds with which they can keep giving us the teachings, so that we can nourish our mind and keep progressing on the path. And so by thinking about His Holiness, we include all lamas into that long life prayer. The wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week.
Thank you, everyone. See you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Venerable. Thank you, Yeshe. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.